welcome to episode 43 of Beers in the Lot. To say this episode is a special one is a vast understatement. Our guest this episode is joining us from his deck just outside Toronto. He goes through hundreds of pairs of white gloves annually, and he's known by most as the keeper of the cup. That's right, we got a chance to talk to Philip Pritchard. He even joined the video call with the cup in the background. And at one point, donned some white gloves to show us a couple of things on the cup. Okay, no more of me. Let's go. Here we go.
So I got to share the story of this one with you. Maybe that's how we can start off if you want.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
Please.
Well, this just got launched last night in Canada, unfortunately for you guys. So this is what you get. It says Molson Canadian Stanley Cup Playoffs. And you open it up, and there's a pair of white gloves here. And then you open the case. And inside there's a silver Molson Canadian. And this beer was poured from the cup into the bottle. So you
that is so good.
Oh,
So
that
it's
is
a
awesome.
playoff promotion that just launched last night. They got into, well, then we have beer stores. They just launched into beer stores today.
That is great.
So basically, you get a chance to kiss the cup, in other words, or drink from the cup, or however you want to word it. And the motto is, every Canadian dreams of sipping from the Stanley Cup. Now you can.
That's awesome.
Stellar. That's amazing.
How on earth do we follow that? On a hockey podcast, there's no better beer to be drank from the cup.
Well, I guess the best way to say it is, it's a good thing it didn't work last week because this wasn't launched last week.
True.
So there's a good thing to everything.
Yeah.
There is. We know what Phil's drinking. Phil's drinking from the cup. I've got a good old Coors Light.
Oh boy.
You know. I actually went looking for Molson Canadian. You know, I almost bought some blue lights, but just didn't quite seem right with the Molson stuff going on. We'd seen the commercial, so
Yeah, we saw you working at the Molson plant there.
Did you see the commercial?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I was all over that.
Yeah. So Ron McLean launched it last night during the first intermission. So
Awesome.
that is awesome. All right, well, Danny, what do you got tonight?
I got a Mast Landing Brewing Company on a mountain in the clouds from New England when I was up there.
Oh.
What are you drinking, John?
Well, let me hear Rigsby's first.
Oh,
All right. Yeah.
Hey.
So
hey Riggs, what do you got?
from Crooked Crab in Odenton, Maryland, I have Pillsbow Baggins. Since John loves Lord of the Rings so much.
No, not a Lord of the Rings fan. Well, I at least can rebuttal because you brought a Lord of the Rings beer on. I'm going to have a Temper Tantrum from Red Shedman Farmhouse Brewery. It's a pink lemonade edition summer sour. I actually have gotten a little bit into the sours recently. I know we talked about that. So good for summer. Really light.
well, all of our beers can fit in the top of this cup, no
That's
problem.
right. Yeah,
We're on our way.
we're on our way.
So right out of the gate, I think we need to ask: is this a sting operation to get to John? Because on social media, he posted a picture. Well, John, you tell it. Tell the story, John.
So my profile picture is me. I don't know if it's actually for the Twitter or Instagram, one of the two. It's me actually kissing the Calder Cup from a few years ago during the last work stoppage.
Hoisting
and kissing the Calder Cup. Yes. Like a member of the organization. So we have
having not won it.
Yeah. So we're had no affiliation with either organization. So we were down at the Caps Arena and they were hosting an exhibition because of the NHL work stoppage. It was Norfolk and Hershey. So Norfolk recently won it. It was there on display, and Hershey had won it in the seasons previous. So I saw it when I walked in and was like, man, that's really cool. And they had a few attendants, and that was kind of it. Kind of went by, snapped a few photos. That was it. And I kind of joked to the buddy next to me. I was like, man, I'm going to pick that thing up, like jokingly. Well, we went by in like the second intermission, kind of when everything shut down. We had to go to the bathroom, buy our last provisions, before they shut down the concessions. And lo and behold, no one was around the Calder Cup, and there was not a soul in sight. So I just said, I was like, hey, can you take a picture really quick? He's like, no, you're not gonna. And before I was finished that sentence, I had it in my hand and I hoisted it twice and smooched it and then put it down very carefully. And no notice. But the best part is I've showed that picture to people and they're like, oh, did you work for like Hershey or Norfolk? Like, when were you on a team? Like, never. Like, you guys are insane. So I have, Aaron has joked since then, like, there's going to be a sting operation to make sure I get reprimanded or fined because
somebody in charge of the Calder
yeah,
is going to come get you.
And they had the Butterfield trophy there too, but that was on a separate table, like a little further down. But the Calder Cup, I mean, if there was ever a moment to kind of steal a picture with a trophy unguarded, that was it.
You found it.
So basically, the moral of the story is I shouldn't leave the cup by myself when I'm near you.
Bingo. Because unfortunately, as a undrafted beer league player who will never probably work with an organization or play, there's a strong chance I'm going to kiss that trophy.
Okay.
So, but definitely.
So last question for you. The provisions you were buying, they were in liquid form, I'm guessing?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I did get a pretzel. I was a little hungry.
We figured that it kind of tied into what I'm sure you get questions for this all the time. It's, oh, can I pick it up? Can I kiss it? And I'm pretty sure you have a canned answer by now, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's funny you say that one because a lot of times my answer is sure once you win it. And then then all of a sudden there's a stop and they go, oh, okay, fair enough. But in a lot of cases, guys want to question it and that. And then you start explaining, well, you know what? Ray Bork played for 23 years and he only got to pick it up once. And
yes.
And you start listing out stats like that. And then you really see, and hockey fans really get it. They get the tradition. They get the superstitions, they get the auras, they get all of that stuff. And I think that's really what separates hockey fans from other fans. And I'm not dissing any other sport. Hockey fans love that tradition and that honor and all of that kind of stuff that hockey seems to have. Like, you look here, every name that's ever won it is on there. It's nothing against the Super Bowl, but it's a new one every year. Or the World Series is a new one every year. And the Cup's 129 years old, and people from around the world put skates on and pick up a stick and want to win it. And it's, I guess the best way to put it, if it could talk, it'd be a bestseller. And I wouldn't be here. You guys would be talking it instead. I'd be drinking my beer elsewhere, somewhere else.
But Phil, you kind of mentioned a good point where it's 129 years old. It's very respected amongst all the professional sports trophies, not just in North America, but across the world. And it's one of the few trophies that the players get to hoist before a lot of the owners. Not that we're taking away anything from the owners, but it is very player oriented because their names are always on the cup.
Yeah, and it's so true that way. And hey, we can compare sports all day and that, but focus on hockey here, and the owners know that the players are the guys on the ice, but they also know that the team is much more than the guys on the ice. It's their family and friends, and because of that gives them the opportunity to take it home for a day and share it with their neighbors or their first hockey coach or their teacher that they hated but pushed them, and now they respect them, and they go and ask them, would you mind getting a photo with me? And it's that kind of stuff is so emotional, so powerful when they do that. because they're giving back at the same time, but they also understand that they couldn't get there by themselves. There was a whole team of people that made Steve Stamkos who he is, or whoever it might be. And they don't forget that. And that, to me, is what the whole aura of the Cup is.
You're stealing our questions right out of our mouths.
I know.
We're going to ask you about that.
I love
a 5-minute podcast. Love it.
No, I love the community aspect, because we talk about the hockey community all the time. Like, John and I both coached or still coach, at the youth level. And we try to impress upon the kids that, you can't show up and play unless like your parents bring you. If the coaches for both teams don't show up, if the officials don't show up, if the guy who is driving the Zamboni doesn't show up, the guy who unlocks and locks the rink every day doesn't show up, like you're not going to play today. And so I think that is such an important piece of the sport. And then obviously, like at the elite level with the trophy that everybody wants to earn, to hear about those community stories is powerful.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. And you know what? You play soccer or you play basketball, you just show up and you're out there kicking the ball around or throwing the ball around. In hockey, you need somebody to tie your skates or make sure your shin pads are on the right foot, or whatever it might be. Tighten your helmet so the mask isn't loose. You can't do it by yourself. And they learned that exactly like you said at a young level. And all these coaches and like you guys are so important to that, because without that, they can't do it. And they know that going through, and then the give back part, as like you said, is the days are, it's unbelievable some of the stuff they do.
It's great.
I think we've heard of at least one or two stories where a guy's spending his day with the Cup and he uses that time to go see one of his old coaches or something like that and say, "Hey coach, you're the one who made such a big impression on me that kept me going, and I eventually got to win this thing, and here it is. I brought it home for you to see it," and that sort of thing. I'm sure they probably never get old. You probably have seen that 100 times, but
you're right. And you're right. They don't get old. They're so powerful. And we will be driving in the town, wherever the player's from, and he'll say, "My old coach lived there. He was such a whatever." And, but he had an impact because he knew he lived there, and said, "Well, why don't you stop and knock on his?" He's not going to remember me. Well, why wouldn't you? Like, you're a Stanley Cup champion then. So they go and knock on the door, and they bring the cup up, and it's almost like they're embarrassed. Like they're talking so quiet. "Hey, Coach Smith, you remember me?" And the coach is thrilled.
Oh yeah.
And then the photo op happens, and then the stories start, and if we could have tapes on all of them or a microphone, then you hear all the stories, because the player's thrilled, and the coach is even more thrilled that he remembers him and he's given back. And all along, as you said, Riggs, is as you're teaching about community way back, and it's realize that it worked, and now they're giving back.
That's awesome. Those are the stories you love to hear.
One cool thing about the Cup, it travels around to various events, and it's still very community oriented. It goes to, a lot of hospitals, charitable events. It not just as a spokesman for the sport of hockey, but it's almost like a really good symbol people love seeing all throughout the world. It's great. It travels. I love that.
Yeah, you are right. And you know what? I mean, sick kids and all those type of hospitals, cancer clinics and that, they're unfortunate, but the guys know it's important for them to go, because if they can put a smile on someone's face for a day, or it helps them along the way, they're thrilled to give back. But you walk into a room and the smile that gets lit up, not only because you've got a Stanley Cup champion there, but you have the Stanley Cup, and then he's going to sign his cast, or whatever it might be. It's so special, and neither one of them will forget it, and that's what's really neat about it. The player's not going to forget it, and the person won't forget it. And it's so impactful, I guess the word would be, that when they walk around with a cup, and not only the patients, but the parents, the nurses, the doctors, the cleaners in the hot, they all become fans, and it's a great marketing tool for a great sport.
I was going to say that you probably get to see more smiles than on average than most, just because you get to bring something that brings smiles and joy to people and show it to them. That's got to be pretty cool perk.
Yeah, you know what is neat, because a lot of people ask, what guy didn't you have a good day with, or what? And I'm thinking, they won the Stanley Cup and they're bringing it home and selling. There's no frowns, there's no upset people. But I think what's really amazing is they bring it into City Hall or wherever it might be, the baseball diamond, if they're a country guy or whatever, and people line up for hours and nobody's sad. They're thrilled.
Right.
They're telling stories, they're remembering things, and they might be in line 2 hours, and they get to the front, they get to talk to the guy, get a photo, and it's made their day. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but lineups suck really, but
Yeah.
people love Stanley Cup lineups. It's exciting.
Uh-huh.
Well, I tell you what, when you joined the call here and turned on your video, it sure made me smile.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We should add video recording for that just to get the reaction.
all those interactions are positive, right? And I think about, like, when a team finally wins it, right? Whatever game it is in the final, and you walk it out, white gloves and the whole thing, you put it on the table, and then you guys kind of hurry off, and then Mr. Bettman walks out, and usually he gets the old treatment when he walks out. But then after that, it's just euphoria, right? In those buildings, and it's probably insane at that point, with everything that's going on, and the guys passing the cup around and all of that. But I wanted to go back to, like, when did you start, handling the cup or managing it and traveling around with it? What year did that start for you, and what was your first, like, cup presentation?
Well, I started at the Hall of Fame actually in 1988, and my first week on the job. So I'm year 33 now. My first week on the job, I had to take the cup an hour north of Toronto, and it was funny. Our staff at the time at the Hockey Hall of Fame, we had a small staff, and about 8 people, and our boss had said it was a Wednesday, and I've been there 3 days. I'm the new kid on the block. I don't know what's going on. And our boss says, on Friday night, the cup's got to go up to Newmarket. Does anyone want to take it? And no one says anything. And I'm thinking, what's happening here? Like, why isn't anyone saying? Yeah, so I did exactly that. I said, Mr. Morrison, I'll go. And I don't know if the other guys were going to bars to hopefully pick up chicks. I have not a clue. He didn't want to do it. And then Jeff Denemy, one of them, my coworkers, said, I'll go with you, Phil. So here I am 5 days into my job, and I've got the Stanley Cup in the back of my Toyota Celica, and I'm driving north on a Friday night to a minor hockey game. And I'm thinking, holy crap. I mean, I've played hockey my whole life. I wanted to win the thing. Now I've got it in my car. I mean, obviously, it's changed a lot since 1988, and I guess I don't have to put my hand up anymore. It just becomes part of my deal. But it's like you said, it's influenced so many people in that. But 1990, the Edmonton-Boston series was the first time that I did a Stanley Cup final. And
Nice.
prior to 94, it was all done. The TVs would go to, after the game was over, the TVs would go to commercial, and we'd push the cup out to center ice or wherever it was going to be presented, and John Ziegler was the president at the time.
Right.
he would do his thing. It would come back to I think it was Sports Channel at Hockey Night in Canada at the time, and then they do the presentation. And then when Commissioner Bettman started in '93, we had all these conference calls on how do we make this presentation part of the show, because it is the show. I mean, that's why they're playing.
Yeah.
And he couldn't fathom why the TVs would go to a commercial. So we got to '94. Gary Bettman's office and his special events, and myself and Scott North, the other guy that walked the cup out with me, we knew what was going to happen, but nobody else did. And all the TV stations were told, do not go to a commercial after the game. Stay on the rink. And so the red carpet comes out, and still people don't know what happens. And then the NHL PR guy does a voiceover in the Madison Square Gardens that says, ladies and gentlemen, the Stanley Cup, and we walk it out.
Oh,
and
man.
I thought Madison Square Gardens was going to fall down that. Like, we were on the on the 4th floor or 5th floor there?
Yeah,
I
right.
The whole thing was going to collapse.
I just got chills.
It was so cool then. And I remember afterwards walking back into back towards the Rangers dressing room, and Ron McLean and Don Cherry were down there, and Ron pulled me aside and he said, that was unbelievable. He said, we had no idea what was going to happen. And he said it's tradition just started right there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, obviously through social media and everything, it's grown and grown, but that red carpet, white glove treatment, and white gloves, every museum in the world do it. If you go to the Smithsonian, every one of their curators has a pair of white gloves.
Yeah.
Right.
We had explained to Commissioner Bettman, why don't we wear our white gloves when we walk it out? And what do you mean, your white gloves? Well, at museums you wear white gloves, and we just we'll bring them from behind scene to in front of the scene.
Yeah.
And he agreed and said, well, do matching ties and jackets, and it went from there. And it was so cool to be part of that. And that was on Game 7 too. And I mean, there was no better script then. It was Canada versus US.
Yeah.
It was Pacific versus Atlantic, East versus, I mean, everything.
Messier said they'd win.
Yeah, the guarantee. I mean, holy. Yeah.
Bure, Richter.
So
you can go
I
on.
gotta jump in here.
Ages.
I gotta jump in here.
Oh,
So-
here he goes. Here he goes.
Here I go. Here I go.
goes.
So I was about 10 or 11 years old at the time, and I didn't really have much exposure to hockey at all at that point. My dad's from Buffalo, New York, and he just turned on the playoffs. It was I think I started up watching the Rangers and the Islanders when they played the Islanders, and just walloped the Islanders, and then walked on through for the rest of the playoffs. And my first experience seeing the Stanley Cup being presented was in '94. And like you said, they said the tradition started right there. It absolutely did for me. And then for the rest of the sport, of course. But that was my first ever time seeing the Stanley Cup being presented, and it was so amazing. I was instantly hooked. I mean, that was the best possible first experience seeing the Cup, I think. And I did a little bit of research for when you came on. I watched some of the Stanley Cup presentations from about like 85 on. And there's a couple of times before '94 where they just push them out on like a food cart with some like drapes over it. And you can tell it's like, just like you said, they just came back from commercial, and then
I can remember when Pittsburgh won back to back there, 91 and 92. And it was a table, and we just pushed it across the ice and it had a skirt on it. And then the NHL security would say, well, back away because Mr. Ziegler's coming out. So I'd be on the ice there, and Mario Lemieux would skate by with a cup over his head. But there was it was different.
no fanfare. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was fanfare in that, and the TV stations covered it a bit differently. But once it became the red carpet treatment, and there might be a better term than that, but red carpet treatment, and everyone kind of gets the idea. It's pretty special.
Yeah.
It really took off from there. And now when a home team wins or a visiting team wins, the walk on the carpet might be longer, it might be shorter, depending on how it is. But boy, is it exciting to all I'm thinking is I don't want to be a YouTube moment
And trip
Oh.
I will say, I watched every presentation, and you guys pull it off flawlessly every time.
Well, I'd rather win it, I can tell you that. But I'm like you with a Calder Cup. It ain't gonna happen. So
So, Phil, I'm kind of curious, especially since '94 to now. There's a lot of stuff that changed in the world between internet, YouTube, social media. So I'm sure there was some tomfoolery back in '94 with the cup that you don't see, or you see more of today, I should say. You know, I'm talking about like the Capitals. You see some of the who was the Penguin? Olimata was passed out after his cup parade, stuff like that. Was there ever a moment in time, like something small, where you were either happy someone took a photo of it for future use, or in recent times where you're really happy that that was captured, whether it was joy or something special?
Well, I mean, we'll use the Washington victory first. The emotion that Alex Ovechkin did after they won, when he grabbed the cup from Commissioner Bettman, it was, to me, that was probably the number one excitement I've ever seen a hockey player. Number two might have been Mark Messier in '94.
Yeah.
But they just released everything they had. But I think Alex, because of when it was and social media was huge, it really showed the world that these guys are actually human, and they go all out to win this thing. And not saying anything against anyone out, because they're all excited. I mean, when Crosby did it, and Jonathan Taves, and Dustin Brown, and everyone did it, they're all excited as well. But it's like Alex took it to another level. and getting to know him, he is such a historian and of the game, and loves the game so much. And we came for a tour through the Hall of Fame before, and we were showing him old sticks, and he had this stick of Rocket Richards, and he wanted to take it and put it in his house and part of his
He
loved everything about it. He just and that's what you like to see, because I think a lot of people forget sometimes that they're athletes, and they're at the top of the level of athletes, but they're also humans, and they're playing for a goal that they've dreamt about their whole life.
Yeah.
And it's really neat to see. So that's a great one. And I if there was a chance and I could get a photo of each guy when we show up at their house, and they're ready for it, but it's when they open the door and we're standing there with a cup, and then you see that excitement. They know we're coming. They know the time we're coming, everything, but it's still so much excitement they have, because now they're sharing it with their family and friends. They're sharing it with the people that mean the most to them.
Yeah.
And that takes it to another level.
Before you come over, they're like looking out their blinds every 10 minutes and looking out every single window, and then they hear the doorbell ring, and they probably go hide for a second. They're like, I gotta play it cool.
Yeah, it's
gotta play it cool. Yeah.
So to answer your question, I the one I would love to get every time is when we show up and they see it for the first time, whether we're holding it or it's in the back of the van and they open the case with their mom and dad around. It's pretty cool.
I guess it's a little more personal then, right? It's like, oh, he's bringing the cup to me, not just
exactly. It is, and
it's
it's
awesome.
his day. And it doesn't matter if it's the 15th time being in Duluth, Minnesota, or wherever we are. It's his time, and what he does is different than the other guy that did it there, or wherever we might be. And that's what makes every day so special and so unique.
So you mentioned Ovi, checking out, there's like a stick vault, right, at the resource center.
Yeah.
So I know like Ovechkin basically collects a ton of memorabilia, and he has all of his own stuff. Are you trying to get your hands on any of that?
You know what? He's actually been great with us. We've got a lot from him over the years. Not only from the Capitals, but we have Olympic stuff from him. We have World Championship stuff from him.
Nice.
We have World Junior Under 20 stuff from him.
Wow.
So we do have a lot. And like I said, but he gets the whole thing. He appreciates the history of the game. When we went back to Moscow, we went into his old bedroom and he has hockey posters up on the, like he is a true hockey fan that's a true hockey player.
Right. Yeah.
And that's pretty special. But more than that, he's a great guy, and he just gets the whole thing. He gets the thing about being a captain and everything.
For some reason, I have no problem picturing Ovi as like a 6-year-old in his driveway going, I won the cup, scored the goal. Like, no problem picturing him like that.
So I have a question for you, Phil. So I know in other duties besides being the keeper of the cup, you're also a curator at the Hockey Hall of Fame. Could you dig a little more into that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in essence, the curatorial part of my job is the main focus, looking after all the artifacts. With obviously this one being one of the main ones there is. So that kind of goes hand in hand. But I mean, we have probably 80,000 artifacts on the game of hockey. Hockey history is happening all the time. Just for example, on Saturday in the Ontario Hockey League draft, they had their first female drafted ever.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and it's really going to elevate not only the female game, but the town that she came from as well, because they merged girls and boys hockey back in Elgin, Middlesex, and she excelled at it. So people are going to realize, hey, I can do this, and that's, I think, what role models are about. So that's hockey history happening, and nobody was even ready for that, and it's happening all the time. So things like that, to me, are the things that really makes the story for the Hockey Hall of Fame. And sure, we can put a stick on display of some guy scoring his 50th goal, but it's the firsts and the moments that are neat that make this game what it is, because I really think the game of hockey has a great personality because of everything that's attached to it, because you can't do it by yourself. It's not an individual sport. We need the team.
So you mentioned earlier that you've played hockey all your life. You play now? You like in a local league or anything like that?
I do, yep. I mean, it's been on hold since last March, I guess.
Right.
So I haven't skated since March 2020. So I don't know if I can say I play right now. You guys have the beers in the lot. We have the beers in the dressing room, I guess. So I guess I'm pretty good at that. But and all kidding aside, it's one of the great things about old timers hockey, I guess, is. And Sidney Crosby told me once, he said, "Hey, Phil, everyone plays old timers. I'm playing it one day." He goes, "We just," right. He says,
"That's right.
We might be in different levels. That's all, but I'm playing it."
Yeah, we say it all the time. Everybody ends up in beer league, man.
Yeah. Eric and I made that joke when we did like our first big parent meeting together for 8U. We just said, in 10, 15, 20 years, if your kids are showing up to the rink a hair later than us because they have the later time slot, we did our job. And that's what we want to do. As long as they're playing.
Exactly, because that's what it's all about. And hey, we all know that winning is great and scoring a goal, but afterwards, the people you meet and the beers you spend time drinking with, that's right. That's cool.
Yeah. Yep.
So let me pose to you guys for a second. You win the cup. What happens? What's your day? Virginia, where are you going in West Virginia with the Stanley Cup?
All right, yeah. Daniel, where are you going?
Have you ever taken the cup to West Virginia?
Well, we've been to a wheeling game with it. I think that might be the only time.
Probably take it to the local rinks. Maybe show it to just all my hockey friends pretty much. That's about it. Probably have a party with it, smoke some meat. That's about it.
Hey, smoked meat win the Stanley Cup. How do you beat that?
That's right. There you go.
Well, it's funny because in the one league that we play in, we've had like 2 versions of imitation Stanley Cups.
Yeah, for our championship run.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And we actually had, at one point, there were a couple seasons where we had like a tradition of everybody got the cup for a couple days or a week or however long it took to get it to the next person. And I don't know if we could tell stories on here, but there were some stories of people like taking the fake plastic Stanley Cup to various establishments around the area.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that.
If the trophies could only talk.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And unfortunately, the one we have, it looks really rough. Like really rough.
You don't want to drink anything out of that.
Yeah.
No.
A lot of that plastic's worn.
It's not taken care of nearly as well as the real one.
Yeah.
Well, I know a guy. He might be able to help you.
Totally blindsided by the what would you do with the cup question?
I know,
man?
right? Put me on the spot there.
I know.
Well, we've been to 29 countries with it around the world now.
Wow.
Awesome.
And every one of them is unique and everything about it. But when you sit with the guy in the dressing room, and because we ask, what's your plans? And it's like, wow. And it's the same thing every time. It doesn't matter who it is, non-player, player. It's like, first of all, I get it at home. What am I going to do?
Guess I'm gonna eat some stuff out of it. I don't know. Invite some people over.
I think my favorite one is still Phil Kessel with the hot dogs.
Yeah.
So, quick Phil Kessel story. So, when he was in Toronto, so he came from Boston. And if you remember, he had cancer in Boston, and he overcame it, and they got traded to Toronto and played well in Toronto. But then he goes to Pittsburgh. First year he wins. So I talked to him about it. What's his plans? He said, well, we're going back to Wisconsin. My family's from there. And there's a street called Kessel Court, which his family owns the places on the court and everything. So we go there, and he said, we've got a special plan we're going to do here. We've got a plane rented, and we're going to Toronto. Okay. So I'm thinking, well, there goes our plans of travel, because we didn't know that. But anyways, we fly. He charters a plane, and we go from Wisconsin to Toronto. And that's late in the afternoon, evening. So we arrive there late. The next morning, we go to Sick Kids Hospital. And we're there 6 hours. And he told me, he said, I told these kids who I used to come and see all the time, if I ever win the cup, I'm spending my day with them. And he said, I never thought I would win it elsewhere other than Toronto, but I promised them, and that's what I'm doing. So nobody knew about it. The Penguins PR people had no idea. He stopped at a store and bought blank pucks because he didn't want media to come around. He wanted to do this. He printed off his own photos and brought them with him. His mom brought them, and every kid there he spent. It was unbelievable. There was no media at all, and that's
wow.
That's amazing.
So cool.
Yeah,
wow.
It was great. And then the second time he wins it, we were on the golf course with the hot dogs, and became a hockey card. I think that was a hockey card too. I think wasn't it, or something?
Yeah.
Well, I think the best part about that whole story with the hot dogs is that was just some reporter essentially joking about what Phil Kessel does in a day, and he took it and did an ultimate troll job with it, which is so spectacular.
It was
Perfect
so
riposte.
Kessel because
Yep.
I mean, here's a guy that's a natural as athlete as you can get. He's just good.
So I have a question. Did Amanda touch the cup when it was there? Because they just drafted a female goaltender in the OHL. She's got a chance. That's all I'm saying, right?
And she is the better Kessel. So
She's the better Kessel anyway.
Well, you know what? I'm trying to think now. That's a great question because I know Blake, his brother, who played in the NHL for a while.
Yeah.
He touched it, and I'm sure Amanda must have touched it. They got family photos. They all came to Toronto. I'm sure we must have a photo of her beside it. She's a great hockey player, great person too. I mean, the whole family is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So out of all the places you've taken the cup, has there ever been a place that you've taken it where you're like, man, I can't wait until this is over? Like, have you carried it up a mountain or anything? Like, you lug that thing.
We have been up mountains. And
Yeah.
and you think you're in good shape until you start mountain climbing, then you realize you're not.
Especially with 35 pounds of cup on your back.
You know what? Usually if we're with a player and we're going up a mountain or something like that, and I'll give you an example actually. Cristobal Huet, the Chicago Blackhawk goalie in 2010 he's from France. And I remember sitting in the dressing room and all the media around him. And, it's a huge moment. The first French player to win the Stanley Cup, is he going to take it back to France? And they were all asking him, is he going to the Eiffel Tower with it? And he was explaining to them, it's a long way from my house. I live on the other side where the French Alps are.
Right.
He goes, it's like being in Chicago and going to LA for the day. Like it's far.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm talking to him and, we're doing the European tour. And he explains to us, you're best to fly into Switzerland, and then we'll drive down into the French Alps, through the Swiss Alps, to his town. So we do his day. He doesn't know that his wife has chartered a plane, so we get to go to the Eiffel Tower. So his whole party got to go. We left his town in the French Alps and went to Paris. And she arranged for us to get there early enough before it opened so we could all go up. So that day, unfortunately, the elevators weren't working. And we're walking up the stairs, and he turns back at one time. There was myself and Walt. And he says, Walt, you want to carry the cup? And Walt says, Cristobal, I never won the cup. Why would I carry it? But you know what? I mean, it was great for his wife to. I mean, obviously, if Frenchmen, everyone thinks of Paris and the Eiffel Tower. So we got to take the Stanley Cup up the Eiffel Tower, which was pretty cool.
That is cool.
So I'm kind of glad Danny brought that up to some extent. So you said you've been to 29 countries with a cup. Yeah. Is there any places you would like to see it go in the near future, or is there anything planned?
Well, we have never been below the equator, actually.
Oh.
So I know that hockey's played in over 90 countries around the world, and we've never been below the equator yet. Washington had Nathan Walker a couple years ago from Australia.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was on the taxi squad, so we couldn't make it work, but Australia's got a great league and a great minor hockey system. It'd be so good for that. And I think a lot of those countries that we haven't had a chance to take it to, it would just help their hockey just one step further and evolve on that. So I'm sure we'll get it down there one day. South Africa's got a great league. New Zealand. There's a lot of those countries that have hockey going on, and they just need that extra boost. And if it takes the cup to get there and help it along the way, I think, I mean, that's what that's what the International Ice Hockey Federation, the NHL, and all the leagues, they want to see hockey grow, and we need all these countries to grow.
Yeah.
We got the opportunity a couple of years ago to take it to China. The Bruins were playing the Islanders in the China games, the first time they were playing in China, and so I took the cup over there. We visited Beijing, we went to Hong Kong, and then we took it on the Great Wall of China. And it was so surreal to be on that wall and to think that here we are, hockey of all things, and it's played in China, and there's leagues booming that were there, and there probably one day there will be a Chinese born player that wins the cup and brings it home, and that really shows how well the game has grown.
Yeah.
Phil, I have a random question for you. What is it like working with Lanny McDonald?
Well, I mean, Lanny, first of all, if Lanny was here right now, he'd be drinking beers with you because he owns a brewery in Montana, a small brewery in Montana. So he's a big IPA guy.
Oh,
Johnny's favorite player of all time.
Yeah, so he's into all of those beers as well. But I mean, Lanny himself was, I mean, obviously a great player. He was involved in management in the Calgary Flames and with Team Canada. So he's so highly respected. But I think the great thing about Lanny is he's a better person than he is a hockey player. And that's what makes it great, because he just appreciates everything about what everyone can bring to the table, and he's the true team guy.
Hey, you don't happen to have any contact info for Lanny, do you?
I would definitely have a heart attack for that. So I actually, for the NHL Hall of Fame or Hockey Hall of Fame relief auction that you guys did recently, I actually bought one of the Lanny line cards, career line cards.
Yeah.
I actually, believe it or not, I actually have it right here, believe it or not. So I took it down because I was curious. So,
all right. That's awesome.
Whose signature's on that certificate of authenticity? Wasn't it
Mr. Phil Pritchard? Yeah. So I listened to it again. But they did a round, like I want to say back maybe in February or January, and I got outbid at the last second. I was at a work event, and then I set it high enough. I went away, and then I got an email like, "Sorry, you didn't win," and I was devastated for like a good 2 or 3 days. And then I got like a random email, "Hey, we're doing round 2 for the Lanny stuff." I was like, "I'm not getting outbid this time." So I have Lanny's book. For some reason, I just gravitated to him as a young child. It may have been the mustache and just the joy he had.
Big Lanny guy.
And he was actually
Where's
like
the mustache?
growing up, because I was a big Pens guy too. Like I remember them talking fondly about Mario and Messier and all those guys winning the cup. But like Lanny was the first one, at least in my mind, that I remember hearing, obviously secondhand because of my age, but a lot of people in the hockey world were pulling for him to win that cup in Calgary that year.
Oh, yeah.
Out of all the people, that was one of the first ones. And then the second one of my generation technically would be Messier, Bork, and then obviously Ovechkin recently, which is kind of cool. So,
well, you know, the great thing about Lanny is, I mean, his middle name is King. He's named after King Clancy.
Wow.
Like his parents knew that he was born to be in hockey somehow. And that's, I mean, when the stuff like that happens, then you know, the stars are all aligned for you then, and it's.
I got another quick one for you. I mean, you're real quick.
I got a quick one for him.
All right. Well, after me. So, obviously, you're the historian, the authority on the cup. What of the many iterations of the cup over the years, what do you think is the most interesting version of the cup, if you will? You know, you had the original, like just the bowl, and then you get a couple of rings, and then you get the stovepipe one, and then the currents. What one do you think is the most interesting?
To me, not only the most interesting, but the most important, when they took it from the first time from here to bring it to here. I think when they did that,
the first 2 or 3 rings there.
Yeah, the first 3 rings that they added, because right here, I know you can't read this, but this is where the first team that ever won its name's engraved in it. So they're not up here because when they first got it, they never engraved the names on it. It wasn't until 1907 the Montreal Wanderers engraved their names on the cup. So the first cup winners were 1893. And inside here, I don't know, you're not going to be able to see this at all probably, but right inside, it says Montreal Wanderers defeated Kenora in 1907. They were the first guys to actually engrave their names on the cup.
Yeah.
Which was a huge milestone, except if you were the 1906 team and you weren't on it yet. They wanted to be on it, and so did 1905, 04, 03, 02. And all of a sudden, they had no room left, and they still don't have the first team on it. So, however, the Silversmith decided to make it there, I think that started the evolution of it beginning to grow. Obviously, Lord Stanley wasn't around then. I mean, that had passed on to the trustees, and the trustees with the Silversmith determined that. But to me, that was I think the most significant thing and the most interesting to me is that the first team to ever win it is down here.
That is cool.
But I gotta invite you all to the Hall of Fame to see it up close. Or
Absolutely.
I've been once, and we only spent a day there. I could have spent 3 days there. I mean, we were with another family, and we kind of were doing a Toronto thing. So we did a Blue Jays game one day, the Hall one day, went out to the zoo one day, like different stuff.
Yeah.
You got to spend a day for each of the cups, right?
Yeah.
People don't realize there's 3 of them.
Well, we have an offsite archives now, which is located where the Leafs practice at.
Right.
So the Leafs have a practice facility. The Marlies practice there. Hockey Canada practice there, and our archives are there, and NHL alumni offices are there. So it's a big Hockey Central place outside of Toronto.
Right.
But we have 18,000 square feet of artifacts that are not on display.
Oh my God.
Wow.
To me, the tour is one thing of the museum, but to go behind the scenes, and that's where I was talking about Alex Ovechkin earlier, that he held Rocket Richard's stick, and that's to me, for the hockey fanatics, that's the tour.
Yeah.
Because you get to hold or see that stuff.
The sticks are always really interesting to me. Like all the equipment is one, because, I still skate, so I still like equipment, but 2, like the technological advances over the years. I mean, from basically, taking trees out of the ground and that were curved a certain way because they were on the side of a hill, and cutting those into sticks, to what we have now with all this composite stuff, that advancement and innovation over the years is really, really interesting for me as someone who does a little bit of, engineering. So it, if I got to see like that, stick rack or whatever it is, I would probably spend 4 days there.
Well, it's amazing you said that, because the evolution of hockey equipment is probably like no other sports in the world.
Right.
I mean, you can look at the evolution of the runner or the sneaker in basketball or whatever, how it's evolved over the years, but the skate, the gloves, the shoulder padding, the goalie mask, I mean, how they've evolved to make it even more protective, but even lighter, so protect the person as well,
right,
is unbelievable. And I don't know how far it can go to. So you all have an invite to the Hall.
We're in.
Danny, did you have something? Did you have one thing you wanted to?
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you. Were you the one to fish the cup out of Mario's pool?
So it's a funny thing. So if they've won it 5 times, and as Mario tells me, tradition's tradition. It went in once. It's got to go in every times they've won. It's gone in Mario's pool 4 times. The last time the Penguins won, Mario's backyard was under construction, so they had the party at Sid's house.
Oh no!
That's what it is.
That's why they didn't go back to back to back.
Yeah.
It could be, I don't know, but Mario says it's tradition. It's got to go in.
That's awesome.
And hockey, you can't mess with tradition.
You can't
all the time.
No, you can't. What do you think, Aaron?
I think we got plenty of great stuff here. We don't want to keep you held up for too long, Phil. This has been fantastic.
Well, I'll share the last comment with you, seeing as we're talking about beers.
All right.
Just over 200 ounces of beer fit on the top of this cup.
Okay.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of beer.
Awesome.
That's quite a lot of booze.
Yeah. So you figured out the
That's a night in the lot, right?
if you're drinking if you're drinking 12-ounce cans there, you can figure it out. Or you can look at it another way, it's the world's biggest shot glass.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, this has been amazing. This has been so cool to get to chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk to us. We are absolutely going to take you up on that invite to the hall as soon as possible.
All right. Well, hey, we got a little issue with our borders closed right now, but we can figure that out soon. And
we may try to come like not in the summer, if you know what I mean. Maybe like after that. So I think you're busy.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we'll see you along the way. We might be driving.
Yeah, maybe.
Ireland or West Virginia or somewhere.
Yeah, come on out to West Virginia.
Somewhere along the way. But thanks for having me. And if you get a chance, try and buy that beer.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I'll be surprised when you knock on my door.
Fair enough. We just got to remember, I can't leave the cup alone because we know what happens if I do that.
We know what happens with Johnny.
Yeah.
I promise I won't do it this time. I promise.
I won't invite him.
Hey guys, I'm glad it worked out. Sorry about last week. It didn't connect, but we figured it out.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Phil.
No worries.
Thank
at
you
all.
so
All right,
much.
guys. Hey,
Thank you
great
so
chatting
much.
to you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Well, Phil said it earlier in the episode. If only this trophy could talk, right? I think Phil is this trophy's mouthpiece, and I could listen to those stories for hours. So a huge thank you to Phil for spending one of those hours with us. Phil, you probably hear this all the time, but this was truly memorable and an experience we will never forget. Thank you again. And thank you for listening. If you're up in parts north, try and get your hands on some cup-kissed Molson Canadian. And hey, maybe send 4 cases down to some Americans. Yeah, maybe. All right, that's a bit much of a request. But I will request that you join us on Discord and tell us what you thought of this episode. Join in the conversation. We're talking hockey, playoffs, all day, every day. Jump on in. beersinthelot.com/Discord. And hey, don't break any international laws trying to support this podcast. You can just go over to Patreon. beersinthelot.com/Patreon. You support us, we'll kick something back to you like a koozie or a pint glass. I bet you that limited edition Molson would taste really good coming out of one of those pint glasses. Just saying. All right, well, that's it. Thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.